I took a lot of photographs during that time. So there were things that would show up in the pictures that were not there, that other people saw these too. So these weren't just things
Mm.
I saw, just weird stuff, dark stuff, things that are not of God, absolutely, and scary. My kids started to experience Legos being thrown at them and no one else in the room, things like that. So things started to happen in the household. And I realized I had opened a Pandora's box. And so I wanted it to end. I was scared for myself. I was scared for my kids. I'll leave it at that. I won't go into a lot of detail on that just because I don't want to highlight that. Just know that I experienced something really dark. And there was a thought that with all of this darkness that I can absolutely see and that others can see as well, then the opposite of that is also true.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Let Thy Single Eye Be Still. My name is Travis Cosentino, and today I have Angela Potts with me. Hi, Angela, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining me. So I want to kind of start. Let's just take a step back and what was your life growing up like?
I was raised a Christian. My earliest memory was going to Sunday school with my grandmother. It's Baptist. I'm from Kentucky originally. So, and it's here and there. I was also raised by different people in the family, and depending on who I was living with, I'd either be going to church or wasn't going to church. And then in my 30s to my 40s, I went to church pretty regularly. I was married for 26 years and we went to church and served in the church. I'm a musician, singer, so I sang in the church choir and did all of that. So I've always believed I'm a good person. I give where I can. I've had interest in helping the homeless people and things like that over the years. And so I believe I was a good person. Was I perfect? No. I was in a marriage that was very difficult. I stayed in that marriage a very, very long time, served in the church, like I said, and then the marriage ended and everything kind of went crazy. And I started to question my own faith and my own beliefs. I started to realize, everything I believe, why is this happening? If I've done all of this, for God and for the Christian church, why is my marriage ending? Why is this all happening? So I questioned it, and I realized at that time that, I believe what I believe because somebody else told me it was true, not because it was my own experience. It's not, not because of something that I figured out on my own. And I realized that I needed to know what I believe. So I abandoned everything I had ever believed. And I called out to God and I said, and I was angry. I said, if you're real, prove it. And so from there, I went on a journey. I started to explore other religions, all the things that, as a Christian, you're not supposed to do. I wanted to know, what is Buddhism about? I sat with the Buddhists up at Zen Mountain Center, did sittings. I studied the Quran, just everywhere I could, and I ended up going into kind of the new age ideas. I started reading tarot cards, and things got kind of dark for me from there.
Well, let me ask you. So you explored other religions and spirituality, and I did the same thing. I think a lot of us do, especially today. But we all kind of get, we take little bits and pieces of what makes sense to us. And
Mhm.
so where were you like in terms of that spiritual outlook? Like how did you feel the world really worked? What was God for you then?
I was just angry. I just remember being so angry and feeling like my faith had holes in it. It had too many holes in it for it to be concrete enough to hold me during this really, really difficult time in my life. It just wasn't. I just didn't feel connected. Um, I didn't feel like it was valid anymore, because it wasn't my idea. It wasn't my. I realized it had all been handed to me as somebody else's truth. It wasn't my truth. It was someone else's. So I really believe now that all of it was vital, all of that whole process, and I also believe that that's everyone's responsibility to find their own truth. If we're, if we're piggybacking on somebody else's initially, that's one thing, but I still feel like we owe it to ourselves to get to the bottom of it. I believe that's what God wants. I think He wants us to believe in Him because we believe in Him, because we've had an experience, or we've had something, deeper than just words or something someone told us. So,
Absolutely. And one of the things they tell you is you just ask God and you shall receive, but you have to be open to receiving. If you were angry, you probably weren't willing to receive when He did
I,
send it to you.
no, I was kind of in a rebellious spirit where I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to try other religions now. I'm going to try other things, and see for myself. And
Absolutely. So you're talking about how it got dark with tarot. Like, can you explain like what happened with the tarot? What got so dark?
it's hard to explain. I All I can say is initially it was amazing. I studied the Kabbalah, I studied the Tree of Life, and all of that. I understand where tarot came out of. I got pretty deep into it, and I was doing some pretty intense and highly accurate readings for people that were, it was impossible. So I initially it was exciting. It was a rush. I was like, oh, here, look at this. This is what it's all about. And when I say things got dark, it's like it's like the red carpet treatment initially until it's not anymore. You start seeing into like I could see. I took a lot of photographs during that time, so I'm a photographer. I take photographs. I do a lot of photography. There were things that would show up in the pictures that were not there. That other people saw these too. So these weren't just things
Hmm.
I saw. Just weird stuff, dark stuff, things that are not of God, absolutely, and scary. My kids started to experience Legos being thrown at them, and no one else in the room, things like that. So things started to happen in the household, and I realized I had opened a Pandora's box, and so I wanted it to end. I was scared for myself. I was scared for my kids. I'll leave it at that. I won't go into a lot of detail on that just because I don't want to highlight that. Just know that I experienced something really dark, and there was a thought that with all of this darkness that I can absolutely see and that others can see as well, then the opposite of that is also true. And so there must be a God. And so that was part of what I've taken with me from that. But I just called out. I just wanted it to stop. I wanted all of it to stop. And I called out to God. It's funny because I'm questioning whether God exists, but I'm talking to Him at the same time. Innately, we know God exists. Like, I believe all of us know deep down. We've just either forgotten or we just choose not to see, not to acknowledge. But I'm saying, when we're really scared, when things really start hitting in our lives, we will call out to Him because we know innately that His existence is in our heart, it's in our soul, it's in who we are. So anyway, I went to this woman for help. This old lady, she was probably, I don't know, when I knew her, and this had probably been 10 years since I'd seen her. She was what they call a prophetess or a seer in the Christian church at one of the churches that I'd gone to. And I remembered her because I remember thinking, like, the church isn't going to take me back after all of this. But then I remembered her. She wasn't ashamed to admit that she could see into things. And so I went to her, I found her, I looked her up, and she was still alive and smoking, chain smoking, living in a trailer park in Indio. And probably, like, I think she was 93, talked really loud because she couldn't hear real well. But I went in there and she remembered me. And I told her everything that was going on. And she says, here's what God wants you to do. He wants you to go home and He wants you to take 3 days off from work and sit out. If you've got a patio in the back, sit out at the patio table, bring your Bible with you. And I remember I kind of groaned. I was kind of rolled my eyes. I was like, oh my gosh, great. And here we go, back to the Bible again, and because my experiences were, oftentimes I read the Bible and I just glaze over and my mind wanders and I fall asleep. She says, no, 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 no. It's not going to be like that this time. She said, you're going to ask your questions of God, and then you're going to open the book and you're going to look down at the wherever your finger lands on the page, and you're going to read, and that's going to be your answer. And it's going to be like bang, bang, bang. He's going to answer every single question, as if he's sitting across the table from you. So I did that, and it didn't take but just a few questions, and I could not believe the answers I was getting. So it compelled me to stay and continue doing what she said. And the third day is when everything happened.
Do you remember what some of the questions were that you were asking?
I try to remember, and I can't remember. I'm guessing because it was the end of my marriage, all the things that I'd been angry about. When I turned away, I wanted to know why, and I don't remember the answers. I wish I had written some of this down. I did not. I just remember being in awe. I remember thinking, like, this is no ordinary book. Coming from reading tarot cards, that was nothing compared to what I realized reading that book. So, and it just dawned on me that this is not an ordinary book.
No, it definitely isn't. I mean, I personally believe that the Bible is a multi-layered, just like multi-dimensional sort of like book, because there's so many things inside of it, esoterically, biblically, historically, and spiritually, that I don't think there's anything else that's ever been written like it before, and it's uniquely different for everyone that reads it.
Yes.
And it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And I know exactly what you're talking about when you ask God a question and then you look in the Bible and then there's a perfect verse right there giving you that answer,
Yes.
and it's beautiful. It's often so let's get into this vision, and let's hear. You go into the backyard, and then what happens? What happens?
So I go into the backyard, and I'm sitting at the patio table. I'm asking my questions. On the third day, she told me to sit out there for 3 days. So on the third day, I was just kind of like, we had like these slats, like it's kind of like what we have here, except there was no metal, so you could see through the slats. And I had a little bit of sky that I could see, and there were no clouds that day. So I was just kind of gazing off in thought, and kind of absent-mindedly taking a break from the question answer thing, and I started to notice that there was something forming in the sky, and I can't tell you how long it took for me to realize that I was looking down on a scene. I felt like I was looking up, but I felt like I was looking down on this whole body of water. So it was, I don't know if it was a lake, I don't know if it was a river. It feels like it was a river. And there were two boats, and they kind of were like old school, like old fashioned canoe boats, and one of them was slightly moving. They were brown. One was slightly ahead of the other in their they were traveling from west to east, and the one in the front had a white flag. And I remember thinking, like, this can't be real. Where am I? If this was all real, then the composition, the lighting, and everything should, match. And I know that the sun was, coming from this side, so the shadow should be cast on that. I was doing that type of thing to try to, like, am I dreaming? And where, what's going on? I had no sense of my body at that time. I wasn't conscious of my own body. And like I said, I felt like I was looking down on this huge scene. And these two boats were traveling. And as I'm looking at the two boats, just like checking the wake, there should be a wake around the boats. Just the thought of needing to see certain things, I'd find that I was like right there. I'd be right there and seeing the wake around the boats. And there was a wake around the boats, just like they should be. Everything looked exactly like it should be. So as I'm doing this, there are mountains also in that scene, and I'm realizing that that it's not the mountains here. This is mountains wherever I was in that scene. At the top of the mountain, I see a flicker of light, and I see smoke. And I asked out loud, I said, God, what is with the fire on top of the mountain? And I didn't hear anything, but I did hear what sounded like a jet engine, like a plane flying over, and it was consistent through the entire experience. So it wasn't an airplane. It wouldn't have lasted that long. But I did hear that all throughout, but I did not get an answer on what the fire was for. As I'm looking at that fire, I start to become aware of, like, I'm trying to, remember what's going on I wanted to know what was going on with the boat. So I looked down, to see where the boats were, and the boats were not in the center of the water anymore. They had been right in the middle of this body of water, and I knew that they had been traveling east. So I turned my head to look east, and I see that there's a clearing. There's like a like a beach, and the boats are parked on that beach, just like they'd been traveling. The one with the white flag was in the front, and it was just parked there. So at that point, I hear a knock on the patio door, and it's my son. And he's like, "Mom, why are you on your knees?" And it's when I realized I'd also kind of tapped my arm. I remember tapping my arm, and where am I? And then my son came outside and said, "Why are you on your knees?" I realized I was on my knees, and the whole front of my shirt was soaking wet from crying. My face was wet. I had been crying and didn't realize it. And so I told him to go back inside the house, and that I was busy. And so he went back in. I didn't want this to end. And so when I looked back up, that whole body of water scene, that was gone. And I looked back at that same patch of sky. There was nothing there initially. I had these little floaters in my vision. I don't know if other people have. I'm sure other people have that too. There's like little floaters. You can kind of, against a blue sky, you can see them really well. And so one of them was like kind of in my field of vision here, and I kind of followed it. And then it started to take me away from that patch of sky, and then back to it again. And when I came back to that patch of blue, this time there was the best way I could describe what I saw was like the Lincoln Memorial. And whenever I see the Lincoln Memorial, I always remember what I saw that day. This wasn't exactly the Lincoln Memorial, but it was a man sitting in a chair, looked like marble. It was kind of grayish white, like stone. A man who was sitting with his arms on the armrests, looked like a white robe, and it went past the feet. I couldn't see his feet. It was enormous, like there's no way I could have seen all of that in that little patch of sky, but I did. And probably like the size of 4 or 5 football fields stacked together, just enormous. And this figure had shoulder-length hair, and I couldn't see the face. There were no facial features in it because there was a mist that was kind of slowly passing in front of the face. So I couldn't see the face, but I saw the hair. And I remember, and the head was slightly turned and angled down. And I remember thinking, it wasn't saying, I remember thinking, he never sleeps. He sees everything. He never has a need for sleeping. And so he's constantly aware. I just knew that. I knew that in my soul. And the facial features, I said, I said out loud, I said, "Is that Jesus?" I said, because I can't see his face. I'm talking to God. "God, is that Jesus? I can't see his face." And I don't really know why I would think that if I could see his face that I would know it was him. But so that's what happened with that portion of the vision.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. I do actually have some questions, but I want you to keep going. So you're looking at God, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happens next?
I believe it was Christ. I believe it was Jesus. There was no audible answer to that question, but I knew it. Because that was where I was struggling the most, I think, was believing whether I believed in God. I think I always knew, you can't look at creation and I knew there was God, but I would think I was having the most trouble with the story of Christ, whether what the Bible says about Christ dying for my sins and all of that, was that true? And I believe that the answer to my question was to show me that, so I believe that was Christ. I didn't see, the tops of his hands, so I can't say for sure if it was God or if it was Christ, but I believe it was Christ.
When you saw Jesus, how did you feel?
I was just in awe. I was just in awe at the size of this figure. I was in awe at I just couldn't believe what was happening. I just, I just remember I remember crying at that point. I mean, earlier I'd been crying and didn't realize it, but I realized at this point I was crying, and I didn't want to look away. That was the other thing too, is I couldn't take my gaze. I didn't want to look away from him. I was completely just drawn to stare at him, and then and then what happens next, and it took my focus. Um, so remembering, and I still can't tell you all of, as I go through, this was in 2011, so this was a long time, this was a while back. I still don't have all the answers as to what every single detail of this meant, but slowly, little by little, I get more and more of it, of what the meaning was behind it, symbolically what it meant for me. I wasn't there yet. I didn't understand. And so as I'm staring at this, at what I believe was God, was Christ, I see this figure come up like to the right of him. So it looked like, it kind of reminded me of like the Oscars, the way the Oscars look. The bald guy is gold. It was sort of like that, but not as golden. It was like a real man, and I was only seeing the back of him. I saw him from the torso up. So it was this man, his arms kind of stretched out to his sides. And he comes up twice, once, dot, 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 and then gone, and then comes up again, and then stays. And it scared me. It scared me because I had been just staring and gazing at this figure. And then all of a sudden that happened. It was abrupt. It jolted me. I remember kind of leaning back. I was on my knees still. I kind of fell back a little bit onto my hands because it scared me. And I said out loud, I said, God, that really scared me. And when I said that really scared me, that figure disappeared. The gold figure, I don't want to say he's gold. He wasn't like the Oscar, but it was just, the Oscar reminds me of what I saw. I can't really describe it. And it was the back of the man too. So that disappeared when I said I was scared. But the figure on the big throne, on the chair, the big throne, did not budge, stayed. So my son comes back out at that moment, knocks on the glass again. Mom, why are you still on your knees? I'm shooing him away. I'm like, Isaac, please go back in. I didn't want to take my eyes off of that, of God. I did not want to take my eyes off the man on the throne. But my son came out. He was pretty insistent. He was worried. And so I turned away, and when I told him to go back in and I looked back, it was gone. Everything was gone. It was just the blue sky. And so I did something. I wanted to share this. I hadn't told you about this before, but I'll share this with everyone. At that time, my children were pretty young. My daughter, I had a 4-year-old daughter at the time, and she had been sitting at the dining room table. So I didn't tell anybody about this. I didn't say a word, but I wanted to draw it. I wanted to, and I've never really, I wasn't much of a drawer or painter at that time. I do that now, but I didn't at the time, but I knew I needed to get this on paper somehow. So I didn't say anything. I told the kids' dad, I'm going to run to the store. I'll be back. The kids were there with him. I took off. I went to Michael's. I got pens, paper. I got watercolor paints and paintbrushes. I brought them all back home. When I got home, I put them on the dining room table. My 4-year-old was sitting there at the time. I think she was 4. I think 4. Left them on the table. Went to the restroom. Came back out. And when I came back out, my 4-year-old daughter had she had opened up the pack of papers, had gotten the watercolor paints out, and was painting already. She was already painting it. And you want to know what she drew, what she was painting? She painted 2 boats. One of them had a flag. I literally have, I kept that picture. I have it somewhere. And when I saw that, I knew because right after, almost immediately after, you start questioning it, like, did that really just happen? And there's no sense of time. I don't know how long it lasted. The only people that really talk that language that I understand from that day, from what happened that day, are the people who experienced had near death experiences. So I've watched a lot of them just because I feel comforted by what they say. I believe everything they say because just all of the elements were the same. Like being able to zoom in on something at just the thought of it. Um,
Mm.
hearing your own voice answer a question. I did hear that when I remember, like when I was looking at his face. Remember, I told you, I said, "Is that Jesus? I can't see his face." The answer back was, "He sees all and knows all and doesn't need to sleep." That was in kind of in my own voice, but I wasn't formulating the answer in my head. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
just a knowing. Just a knowing. It wasn't really words. It's a knowing. It meets you where you are. The question goes out and is being answered simultaneously. So there's no
that's
sense of time.
amazing.
Time isn't real. It's not real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Now, I've never heard that before. So I heard people say that they got the answers and it's telepathically and they're trying
Mhm.
to explain how it works, but I've never heard somebody say basically the minute you said it, the second it comes back to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it
That's
was like.
wild.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's an amazing story for sure. And you'd mentioned that like you would think of a place and you would be there. That happened too.
It was like when I was trying to test the composition, lighting and shadow. I knew that there should be a wake around the boats, and I remember being so far above it, and then suddenly I'm like right next to it. I'm right next to the wake, and I can see clear
Oh,
there's a wake, and that's why I know that it works like that. It was mostly just that.
okay.
Also, I also got the sense that looking over to the east to find those two boats, I believe that I was there quicker than I should have been to see where they were. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I have a couple of things I wanted to share just really quick in relation to all of this, things that I've gotten since then. Number one, I did research afterwards. We aren't able to see the face of God. We aren't able to see his face. And so that makes sense to me that I was not able to see his face for our protection. We're not, he's so pure and we're not. Um,
Mhm.
the other thing was when I was looking up at the mountain at the fire, I realized that when I looked it up, in ancient times, they would put fire on the top of the mountains because they didn't have lighthouses. Those were old school lighthouses. So, what a lighthouse represents is guiding boats to safety, giving them a beacon at night to be able to warn them of danger. So, and here we've got a boat scene and we've got a lighthouse scene, ancient. The other thing is, I knew that the boats represented a journey, and I believe that maybe it has to do with my life, or all of us have a journey we're on. And there was a time period from when I looked at the top of the mountain, which I believe represents God. God is often referenced as the lighthouse. I'm looking at God, and then when I look back down, the boats that are on the journey aren't there. They're already at the destination. What happened between the time that I saw them and the time they got over there? I don't know. And I feel like that's like my life. My life has been like that. I'm going to arrive at my destination, but it's all that stuff in the middle I don't see. And I believe the boats got there because I had my face towards God. I was focusing on him, and I didn't need to babysit those boats all the way across. Um, in my keeping my focus on him, they will make it across. We will get to our destination, and I believe that that's what that meant for me, at least
Wow.
what I've gotten so far. Yeah,
That's beautiful. I absolutely love that. That's so good. I don't think I would have thought of that way, but I can definitely see it that way when
yeah,
you say that.
yeah.
Wow, amazing.
There's
And I
even
do
a
have some
script.
questions.
I'm sorry. There's even a scripture in the Bible that talks about a mist that goes before his face. When I read that, I had never read that before. It's in there. I can't tell you where it's at, but it's in there. If you Google it, it literally talks about there being. I think we look right now. We're looking through a glass dimly or something like that. But it talks about it like a mist. Right now, we see him as though there's a mist. But there will come a day when we see him face to face.
Hmm, amazing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. So I'm kind of curious, like, okay, so you go inside and your daughter is painting the two boats, right? Right? And what happens in your mind when you see this? I mean, how do you feel?
I just I wanted to climb to the top of the highest mountain and just scream to everybody, "Wake up everybody, he's real." And the few times that I tried to share it with people, though, I did not get a good response. Not in a bossy way, just excited. Just and I understand why it's so hard. I went through it myself. I went through that same thing where anybody could have told me something similar, and I would have just been like, "Well, that's your truth. That's not my truth. You saw it, I didn't
Mhm.
see it." And now here it's my experience, and I just want so badly for everyone to know. So I waited a lot of years to be able to share it. And so, Travis, I want to thank you. I knew when you asked me, I knew it was time, because I've waited a long time to tell anybody. So thank you
Thank you
for,
for sharing with me.
yeah. And I believe God's going to bless you and your channel and all the people that watch. I think there's a purpose for it. And I thank you for doing
You're
it.
welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. We're all trying to do God's work the best we can. It's just one day at a time, and
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for that. So again, before I go into these questions, I want to know. So you have this experience. Who do you become? Like, what happens to you spiritually now that you've gotten the answers that God asked you for? Now, what are you doing?
Life is hard. I will say life is still difficult. It's challenging. I'm reading this book right now. It's called The Sacred Romance. It's written by a guy named John Eldridge. If everything was easy, could God intervene and make my life easier? Yeah, he could. But then would I be loving him because he's doing these things to fix them for me? Or in spite of those challenges, do I still love him? That's real love. That's true love. When somebody loves you because they choose to, not because I believe we're given free will. So life, if life was always easy, then I would love him because life is easy. I love him despite it. I love him despite it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have had the journey. So life is hard sometimes now, but I'm like right now. I'm looking at you can't see it, but there's a tree like right outside here, and it's all dark and green and everything. But on the very ends of it are these brand new light green little buds coming out, and I see the beauty in the little things that I can. And one of the things that has happened since then is I discovered that I can paint and I can draw, I can sculpt, and it gives me so much joy. And it makes me realize, we are like little replicas of God. We are able to do a lot of the things He does. He created all of this, it's all art, but we have the ability to do creative things as well. And that gives me huge solace. I can't even tell you. Life's still going to happen, but I look for the beauty in things because that's all part of the journey, you know.
I love that. And you weren't artistic before this?
Well, I'm a musician and singer. And I
Okay.
love photography. But that was the first time drawing that vision was the first time I actually put pen to paper. And I didn't do it again for years later. I took a ceramics course in college in 2020 and started sculpting and realized I was pretty good at that. And then started thinking of, as somebody had said, if you draw every day, it'll enhance even photography, it'll enhance all the other art mediums and art forms. So draw for 45 minutes every day. I don't make it 45 minutes. I usually only have about 20, 25 minutes, but I do it every single day since. And I started to realize like, wow, I've gotten better at drawing. And then I started painting. And so now I have that. It's such a gift. It's such a gift. I can't tell you. I love it. I wish I had more time to do it. But today I work as a drug and alcohol technician slash counselor. I work at a rehab. I've done that for years. And it's difficult work. Let's put it that way. It's very difficult work, but it's also rewarding. Um,
Do you ever feel the Holy Spirit sort of speaking through you?
yes, all the time. It's almost like it's almost being able to recognize an opportunity more than I wouldn't share this story outright, with somebody one on one. Probably it's not probably appropriate, but I'll see opportunities open up where someone will ask me point blank a question, or um, just different opportunities to be able to kind of share something. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to have the experiences I've had and the hardships too, because the hardships, if I hadn't had them, I wouldn't be able to help somebody else who's going through them. So, but yeah, it happens often. It happens often. And they always say like, there's a lot in a name. And, my name is Angela and it means messenger. And I thought,
Oh, I
well,
didn't
that's
know
appropriate.
that.
You're given, if you look at people's names, I named my son Isaac and it means he laughs. And my son is just a comedian. So, be careful what you name your kids. But, I believe God's present when a child's named. I really do. I believe there's a reason for everything. Everything has a reason. Nothing is by chance. The hardships are
Absolutely.
hardships for a reason. They're for us to grow and to help others. We're strong. If I wasn't strong, he wouldn't maybe be able to have me go through what I needed to go through to have the compassion at the level I need to have for somebody else. You know. So
Absolutely.
I try to be positive and optimistic. I'm not always. I'm not perfect. I still pout and throw fits sometimes, but I catch myself as best I can and try to get back on track because that experience was hefty, and I could never forget it if I wanted to. I couldn't deny God's existence if I wanted to. I realize that now. Like, you're not ever going to be able to do that again. You're never going to be able to deny or question whether He's real or not. He's real.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's
So
beautiful. And, kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier about loving unconditionally, I think the reason why we're here is to love unconditionally because, despite all the sin and the things that we do every single day, God still loves us unconditionally. And I
unconditionally.
think that He wants us to do the same with our brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. Those were the last two commandments. It wasn't the Commandments He left us with, His death, and rising from the dead and saving us from our sins. I mean, the New Testament comes into play, and He leaves us with um, love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Those were the commandments. When they asked, "What would you have us do now?" That was all. That was what He said. Because really, if you think about it, if you're doing those two things, it covers all the rest. It covers everything else. You're not
Hmm.
gonna. You're not gonna. You're not gonna kill. You're not gonna steal. You're not. You're not going to. If you're fully loving God, because He loved us first. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So you said prophets are seer in the church. I have never seen a single Christian church that would ever have anything like that. So what church did you go to that had that?
It was the Assemblies of God. So it's a
Okay.
Pentecostal church.
Okay.
Uh
That's
huh.
freaking awesome. Seriously.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet this lady if she's still around.
I don't think so. Well, I mean, if she's over 100 years old. See, she's
Okay.
93 in 2011. So what would that make her?
Don't ask me math.
Yeah, no, me too. Me too. Till
Okay. All right. So maybe we'll go on to the next question. Okay. So what I loved is that the lady told you to spend 3 days in the backyard asking these questions,
Yeah.
and that is, to me, it makes me think of Jesus Christ when He spent 3 days in the cave before He was resurrected.
I didn't think anything of that, but that's occurred to me too. I've taken this vision apart, like piece by piece, and tried to research. I mean, I've had years to look into it. Yeah, and that occurred to me too. I hadn't thought of it at the time at all. Yeah,
You're welcome. Did
yeah.
you have to fast, or you just spent time with God?
Did I have to fast? No,
Mhm.
no. And
Okay.
I wasn't out there. I'm a stay up all night kind of person, sleep all day kind of girl. So I'm guessing I was probably up at about 10 in the morning. Probably had coffee and all that first, and then went out there. But I did go out there every day for, I wouldn't say the entire 24 hours, but I was out there every day, like she said.
Now, you had mentioned that there was a white flag
Mm-hmm.
on one of them, but there was no flag on the other one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Nope.
and it made me kind of think, and the flag being white, people that are in heaven, they all wear white. as far as
Hmm.
I know. Everybody's wearing white because they're purity.
Yeah.
So it made me think, because that boat was ahead of the other boat, that maybe that was the boat that was going to take you on your spirit journey to see God in heaven. I'm assuming you were like right in the in between of like heaven and earth or whatever.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know where it was. I don't know if it was heaven. I don't know. It was beautiful. It was
but you
beautiful.
definitely weren't in your body. That's for sure. You were not in your body. You could see all around. You could be
Yeah,
anywhere you wanted to be.
yeah. In my memory, I tried to remember what my body was doing, and I had no sense of my body. There was no sense of my body. I can put myself back there easily. I can imagine myself back there and remember. There's no feeling. There's no sense of my body at all. And I'm looking down when obviously I'm not above that scene looking down. I'm down here looking up. So
Hmm.
I was someplace else. Yeah.
Amazing. And then, so you said the boats were going to the east, which is this way, right? So I was thinking, you know how the Bible is, it's an allegory, right?
Yeah.
And there's an allegory that talks about the when uh, when the Jesus cast the net to the right side, that he's not talking about the right side of the boat, but he's talking about the right hemisphere of the brain, which is the creative side. Creative
Mhm.
side, the side that God's on. When you think about positive and negative, so you have the right side and the left side. So you cast your net to the right side, and that is the seat of heaven where God sits.
Yeah.
Just interesting, sort of
That is
esoteric
interesting. Thank
stuff.
you for that. I haven't had anybody really analyze the vision. I've asked a couple of people who I trusted, but no one really. That's really no. That's the type of stuff that I had hoped that maybe somebody would enlighten me. Maybe God would speak through to give me some more clues as to the meaning of it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I'm grateful that you're open to that for sure.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking about your vision of seeing Jesus in the sky or God, right, and he's like the size of a football or 5 football fields. It's huge. I
Enormous.
I have heard many rapture dreams where they see the exact same thing, where they see
Really?
Jesus in the sky and he's like 40 feet tall and he
What?
takes up the entire sky. Yes, yes. Many rapture dreams
Share
I've
that
heard.
with me afterwards. I would love to see that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I can find it, I'll definitely send it to you. Is there anything that you wanted to part with and say to the people that are watching this?
I would say make sure that what you believe is um, your belief and not someone else's belief. Have your own experience and do what it takes to investigate and ask. I think the most important thing that we can do is just ask, are you real? Can you show me? And I don't believe that you will be disappointed. If you really want to know, he's gonna answer.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me in this session. I really appreciate you. um,
Absolutely.
I
Sorry for all the technical difficulties, but yeah.
That's all right. I look forward to us being able to chat again someday, and I bid
Yep.
you farewell.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.